For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for instant analysis of USC's 85-66 loss to Gonzaga. Shotgun, let's first start with the beginning of the game because that's really where the game started and ended for USC. I'm curious about your opinion because it seemed like Gonzaga's pace of play really frazzled USC at the start, and then it kind of went downhill from there.
Yeah, USC came out and they turned the ball over early. And when you do that, you allow a team to get a little bit of a lead. Well, against a team like Gonzaga, you can't let that happen because a little bit of a lead turns into a big lead in a hurry because of how quickly they make you pay for every single turnover. USC, they had 5 turnovers in the first 6 minutes. They had 7 turnovers in the first 12 minutes. All 7 of those ended in layup opportunities on the other end for Gonzaga. They are so quick to turn around either a long rebound or a turnover just to quickly turn it into a layup attempt on the other end with how quickly they get up and down the court. I don't think USC was really prepared with how fast the Gonzaga offense moves up and down the court. And I think it was similar to how we talked about how USC is very difficult to prepare for in the NCAA tournament setting with just a short preparation, one-day turnaround from the Sweet 16 to Elite Eight because their length and their height and how you're going to have to face that in the 2-3 zone they were throwing at. I think Gonzaga is the same way. How quickly they get up and down the court. It was like a blur watching them at times. They're just so efficient with how quickly they get the ball from either the turnover area, which several of those were around the free throw line, the top of the key. They get the ball immediately to a guard at half court, and then suddenly there's a pass across the court, and they're shooting a layup. I mean, it was just impeccable to watch the way they can move the ball so quickly. And I don't think USC was quite prepared for the quickness there. I think USC really struggled early with the quickness of their talent overall as well. Just Drew Timme with quick hands, knocking some balls away. I think that USC struggled with that early, and when they finally made an adjustment, it was just too late for them. They got down 25-8, and after that, they only lost the rest of the game by 2 points. It was 60-58, I believe, the rest of the game. So, they showed they could be competitive, but when you're down 25-8, it doesn't matter. They had an opportunity to play with them. They showed that they could play with them, but when you give up a 25-8 run to start the game, then it's so hard to dig your way out of it, and they just couldn't do it in this game.
Yeah, like you mentioned, you can't start slow against a team like Gonzaga. It seemed like Andy Enfield was a little disappointed with the way that USC was shooting in this game, especially given the run they've kind of been on in the NCAA tournament. What did you take away from USC's offensive efforts?
Yeah, I mean, when you give up a run like that, the only way you can try to get back in is you got to be able to knock some shots down. And USC came in, they shot over 50% from three in the NCAA tournament leading into this game. They shoot 4 of 15 in this one, and that was the big difference because Gonzaga's not going to go on a 6 or 7 minute stretch where they don't score. They're just too talented. There's too many offensive weapons around. So you have to put up points quickly on your own end. And USC, they had an 8-0 run at one point, and that was because they knocked down 2 threes. But besides that, they never really got that consistency going, bucket after bucket after bucket. If you can make 3 buckets to Gonzaga's 1, that's the same as, having a quick spurt. But they were never able to do that. They were able to get some stops in the second half and slow Gonzaga down a little bit with their defense, but they couldn't make the shots enough consistently to be able to catch up. It was just Gonzaga put on a clinic, and USC, didn't have the answer for it. They needed to make shots to be in this one. We talked about the 2 things that they had to do in this game: take care of the basketball. They only had 10 turnovers now. They only had 10. It felt like 25 or 30, watching the game early, because 7 of those were in the first 12 minutes when they really took over the game. But the rest of the game, they really took care of the ball. But you can't have a rest of the game moment with a team like Gonzaga. So they had to take care of the basketball, and they had to make some shots. And when you're missing, and especially when you miss 3-pointers, that's long rebounds. That's another opportunity for them to get out and transition. And Gonzaga did it over and over against USC in this one.
Now, when we previewed this game, we were really curious to see how Gonzaga's offense matched up with USC's defense. On the whole, how do you think USC's defense played, especially after they kind of settled into the game?
Well, after they settled in, which was, giving up 15 fast break points in the first half, it was a different game. But if you take away the 21 fast break points, which is ridiculous to try to really do, But if you have that, say they played better, they didn't give up as many transitions. They gave up 10 points or 11 points in transition, and suddenly it's a 75 point. Now you're in the range where you think you can keep up with Gonzaga. If you hold them to 75 points, that's kind of the area where they needed to be, and they needed to be between 70 and 80 realistically to have a chance to win this game. And then if you make some shots, it's a different game. But their defense, once they settled in, and I thought that their defense was good to really good at times in the second half, just forcing tough shots with Gonzaga. But Gonzaga, they shot 50% in this game because they were able to get those 21 points in transition. USC's half-court defense, I thought, was pretty solid. Now, Gonzaga did some good things, being able to find some holes in the zone and find some open looks. And Drew Timme was remarkable down low for them. Just so many different moves, great feet down there, so many head fakes. If you're going to rock the Fu Manchu, you better be able to back it up, and he definitely did in this game. He was fantastic for the Bulldogs in this, and their offense. They made some threes as well. Even though USC, shut down Corey Kispert, their first team All-American, shut him down a little bit. Let's not say completely shut. He still had 18 points, but it took him 19 shots to do it. He was only 6 of 19. He was 3 of 10 on threes. So USC's defense made it difficult for them and could have potentially frustrated them if the game was closer, because Gonzaga may have felt like, normally we were able to make a bunch of shots. So that's what you needed to do against an undefeated team, to make them feel the pressure of that undefeated season, the weight of it, make them feel the pressure of being the top overall seed. Are we going to get upset? But when you start out 25-8, there's no chance. 17-4 was the initial run, and then it turned into 25-8. There's just no chance for USC to put that type of pressure on them. And Gonzaga was very good throughout the game, even though USC's defense stepped up in the second half.
There were also individual anticipated matchups in this game, specifically Evan Mobley going up against Gonzaga's top-tier talent. How do you think he fared, and how do you think Isaiah Mobley fared as well?
I thought Isaiah Mobley was the best Trojan on the floor. He was fantastic for them, had 19 points, 7 rebounds, so he was really good. Evan Mobley finished with 17 points. It was a little bit inconsistent. He was 5-11 from the field. He didn't have the dominant performance that they needed from him. But he knocked down his free throws. That's one thing USC fans were worried all season, like, we're going to lose in the NCAA tournament because we can't make free throws. Hey, they made those. They made 74% of their free throws in this one. That's plenty good enough, but that's only one category. You need to be able to fill up the stat sheet in all the categories to beat a team like Gonzaga. Evan Mobley didn't quite do that. It was a good matchup between him and Timme, 17 points versus 23 points. But they needed him to be dominant. They needed Isaiah to be dominant, and they needed other guys to step up, and they didn't really get that. Now, Drew Peterson had 13 points. Taj Edey had 11 points, but those were quiet points, and no one else really scored at all for them off the bench. They needed Ethan Anderson to have 6 points. They needed Chavez Goodwin to have 6 points. Max Agbampolo knocked down a 3 or 2. They needed those type of performances. Instead, they got 2 points from Isaiah White and 4 points from Max Agbampolo. No one else scored in the game. So, they needed a team effort. Unfortunately for USC, picked an inopportune time to end their streak of having, they were 22-0 this season when at least 3 players had scored in double figures. They get 4 in this game, but it wasn't the same because they didn't have the complementary pieces pitching in that 4 or 6 points that they needed behind it. So USC loses that one, so they'll finish the season 22-1 in that category.
When you evaluate this game on the whole, Shotgun, do you see it more as USC made mistakes in the beginning and that's why they lost the game, or they ran into the freight train that is Gonzaga?
I mean, I think it's a combination. If you take away that early period, USC hung with them, but Gonzaga, that's the thing. They go on those stretches, they go on those runs, and they're so quick to move the ball up and down. They're so efficient with it that, they turn what should be, if you remember the Oregon game, USC struggled out the gates a little bit, first 3 or 4 minutes there. They were down 5-0 that game. Well, Gonzaga, it was 7-0 in the first 2 minutes. They called timeout. There's the unfortunate collapsing of the referee, and luckily he did not have to be hospitalized. We're happy to hear that. But it was right at the media timeout, so there was going to be a timeout there anyways. But it elongated a little bit. There was a longer pause, so that was a time for USC. They could really just pause, take your breath, refocus. Let's get back in this. And instead, it was 11-4 at that time. If USC comes out and makes a bucket, make a 3-pointer, it's 11-7. You got a whole new ball game. But instead, Gonzaga, they miss a shot. Gonzaga, Timme makes a shot. They miss another shot, and these were, good-looking shots from Isaiah Mobley and Evan Mobley. Timmy gets a dunk on the fast break because they don't get back in time. And then, Timmy gets a steal and gets a layup with a nice Euro step, just breaking out all kinds of moves in this game. But that's a 6-0 Drew Timmy run against them. And suddenly it's 17-4 instead of potential 11-7 if USC does make a shot, 11-6. Much different game there. And that's the spurt ability that Gonzaga has that makes it so difficult for them. So I think it was a little bit of a combination. I think once USC settled in, but it's too late to settle. You can't settle in an Elite Eight game. You got to be ready to go from the beginning. And like I said, I think it was a little bit of just being unprepared for the speed and pace that Gonzaga runs with. And I think that's very difficult for any team with one day of preparation like USC had.
Now, looking big picture, Shotgun, what is your evaluation of this season? It seems like USC came into this year with a chip on its shoulder just because they were picked to finish sixth in the Pac-12, and now here they are in the Elite Eight. What did this program do with this season?
I mean, you look at this season, and to make it to an Elite Eight the first time in 20 years, the second time in 60 years, super impressive. It's a bit hyperbole, but I feel like it's kind of miraculous the way they put this season together. To consider, Andy Enfield brought it up in his press conference again that they didn't meet half their players until, he said today, September 1st, at least until the fall. They didn't meet half their players in person until that time. And then to deal with the local restrictions and not be able to have any summer practices, to not be able to get on the court, to be able to come together and gel and to continue to progress throughout the season and get better and better and better it was really a tremendous job by the team and the coaching staff putting things together. We came into the season going, man, Evan Mobley's going to be fun to watch. And hey, maybe Isaiah Mobley takes that big jump from freshman to sophomore year. Well, I wonder where he's going to be at. And then the rest of it was, I don't know what they got. Who are some of these guys? We get some of these grad transfers in. Taj Edey had scored like 12 points a game at Santa Clara. Most of the time, grad transfers, their average is going to drop when they get to the next level. Did you really expect him to be a big-time scorer? No. He was fantastic for him all season. Chavez Goodwin and Isaiah White just filling perfectly as far as the roles that they needed. I thought that Max Agbontpolo took a big step forward, finding a role and being able to excel as a defensive stopper for them. It's really a testament to the coaching staff, how they were able to put this team together. And, Andy Enfield shared that credit with the team. He said, I've never seen a team develop a chemistry and a culture on and off the court like this team has had, and the way they improved from training camp to now. But they got better and better, and they played their best basketball at the end of the year, which was all you could ever ask for from a coaching standpoint. And, in an NCAA tournament setting like that, it's going to be difficult for them to replace Evan Mobley. He's obviously gone in the draft. What will Isaiah Mobley do? He averaged 16 points per game in the NCAA tournament and was named to the all-region team along with Evan Mobley and 3 Gonzaga players. So, has he done enough that scouts say, yeah, we need to bring that guy in, we think we can develop him at the next level? Or does he return? Because that's a big question for USC, because if he returns, you can focus your offense around him because of the dynamic things he can do, the versatile skill set that he has, similar to Evan. Whereas if he's gone, your starting forwards are going to be Boubacar Coulibaly and Joshua Morgan, and neither one of those guys has the offensive skill set right now that's anywhere close to what the Mobleys have. So you're going to have to completely change the offensive system and do some different things. So some big question marks for them. But I think it's just been a terrific run for them to make the Elite Eight, first time in 20 years, to make the Sweet 16, first time since 2007 to do that. Yeah. To make it to the second weekend was impressive. And the way they did it too, it wasn't just, they escaped, they got by Drake and then they escaped with some miraculous play against Kansas. They thumped Kansas. They put a hurting on Kansas. Blue blood Kansas, 34 points. They won that game. That just caught everybody's eye. And then they really dominated against Oregon as well, even though the game got a little bit closer towards the end, finishing off that one by 14. To win all 3 games in double figures, I think it sets the table for them to potentially continue to build this program, even without Evan Mobley. Now, that's going to be tough, but in this game, we've seen one key transfer can change everything. Look at UCLA on the other side. They're going to the Final Four. Johnny Juzang carried them in the Elite Eight game. He scored 28 points. The rest of the team barely scored that. So, or they didn't even score that. So, he was fantastic for them, and he transferred to Kentucky. Can USC get a big time transfer to come in and fill in one of those starting roles, because Tajidi may be gone. We don't know what the future holds for Isaiah White or Chavez Goodwin, even though they have the extra year of eligibility. We'll see if they decide to return. Are there any transfers? There's a lot of question marks about the roster going forward, but you got to give the coaching staff credit. The last 2 years, what's happened? They've had 4 guys return each of the last 2 years, and they've reconstructed the roster twice in a row. And now would have been the 4th NCAA tournament in 6 years for them. Would have been their farthest run, but just a continuation. And last year they could have went on a potential run, maybe a Sweet 16 last year. I think they built the program, and the way they're playing defense now the last 2 years, I think the program is definitely on the up and up, even without Evan Mobley next year. So we'll see how this program continues to grow under Andy Enfield, and we'll see if the same faces are on the bench next year, not just the roster, but also the assistant coaches, because Andy Enfield's talked about that it's a joke that Jason Hart is not a head coach yet, and he said that Chris Capco also should be considered for some jobs as well. So we'll see if anyone reaches out, and if those guys get an opportunity somewhere else, or USC fans should not complain if those guys are both back next year as well, and they continue with the staff that they have, because they're doing a great job.
In that sense, Shotgun, do you think the magnitude of this season might be reevaluated in hindsight, just for what it could potentially do, just from a national recognition standpoint and from maybe a USC fan engagement standpoint? I know that's a hypothetical here, but do you think that this could be considered a turning point or a mark in the program?
I mean, we have seen a lot of kind of casual fair weather fans jump on the bandwagon during this and be much more invested, and that's a great thing to see for USC basketball, because it's always kind of been the redheaded stepchild over across the street from Figueroa, with the football team being so successful throughout the early aughts. So it's great to see them doing well, and love to see the fan support. Obviously, no one was allowed in the Galen Center this year. We'll see what the crowds look like next year. It would have been great for them to see this team, to see the way they played defense, the way they were, especially at the end of the season, the way they were flying around the ball. That happened again tonight. They were flying around the ball on the defensive side. Just Gonzaga was making some shots. They made some things difficult for them, but the transition really killed them there. But yeah, I think it definitely can be that stepping stone. And maybe this is similar to the Baylor situation. When Scott Drew took over there, they were absolutely in dumps. When Andy Enfield took over, there was no talent on the roster. This program was in the dumps. And it was a couple of really bad years for Baylor. Same thing with USC. Drew has really built that program up, and they have become, a force in the Big 12, and also a consistent second weekend team in the NCAA tournament. I think this was their third Elite Eight in the last 5 years or something like that, to make their first Final Four. Can USC build on this Elite Eight run and potentially become a fixture on the second weekend of the NCAA tournament? That's the goal for the Trojans, and that's what you got to see if Andy Enfield and the staff can do. It all starts with the recruiting, but can they continue to progress teams and show improvement throughout the season? That was probably the most impressive portion of this team. Evan Mobley was great, and he was consistent for USC, but he also took really big strides throughout the year as well, I thought. And to see other guys continue to do that, can they continue to do that with other players in the future? That will be the big thing for them.
Alrighty, Shotgun. Any final thoughts before we put a bow on this USC basketball season?
I mean, you got to give credit to the Pac-12 for their tremendous showing in the NCAA tournament, and hopefully that is a positive sign for recruiting. For one, I think that shows the recruits like, oh, let's go to the Pac-12. There's some really good basketball being played there, but a ton of money is going to come into the conference from this as well. And to get a team into the Final Four, even if USC fans aren't happy that it's UCLA, I think is a positive thing for the Pac-12. I don't think UCLA has much of a chance in their next game, because they're going to face this Gonzaga team. And I think they're going to get run over too, just because Gonzaga is that good. But I think it's a positive thing for the Pac-12 to show, with 3 teams in the Elite Eight, the way they were so good in the postseason, that maybe they'll get some more recognition and some respect going into next season. And we'll see where the tournament goes, or where the teams go from there. But USC, like I said, I think they're on the up and up, and hopefully for the program's sake, that they can ride this momentum into next season and through the recruiting process, because there's a lot of really high value transfers out there right now.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's 85-66 loss to Gonzaga, and also wrap it up for this year's basketball season. For Shotgun Spratling, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.